Hello and welcome to the somethingth annual Average Joe end of year music list. Boy, do we have a show for you tonight with me talking about albums I quite liked. I'm realising now I probably should have scripted this at all instead of just pressing record. But here we are. Welcome to the video. Let's just go, shall we? Let's just go. Okay. We'll kick the list off with Russian Circles being Russian Circles in 2022. Intensely talented technical musicians making some of the finest instrumental post-metal you're likely to ever stumble across. Flowing from uncompromising heaviness to gentle, hypnotic meditations with well-practiced grace, this record is more of what makes these guys great, with tracks like Blastamil and Close of Bloom being among the finest in their discography. I've been losing interest in this particular style of music lately and find that at its lowest moments it can get a little by the numbers, but even so I found a lot to enjoy here, and long-time fans certainly won't be disappointed. Next up is a pleasantly unexpected entry. Motorpsycho are one of my favourite 90s bands, but as the years have gone on, they've strayed further and further from their darker, rawer sound and more towards a virtuosic tribute to 70s prog rock, which I'm sure does it for some people, but always leaves me a little bit bored. This year's 4-track offering, however, showed the band still have teeth, with opener The Ladder ripping through some vicious guitar barbs, while Mona Lisa Azrael feels like a more contemplative and less abrasively bombastic version of their usual fare. The 22-minute closer also carries its fair share of highlights throughout its runtime, and while the band clearly have no intention of drastically upending their sound, I at least found this record to be the most appealing framing for it. Astronoid are a hard band to pin down. Their encompassing vibe is incredibly shoegazy. The transcendent opener Admin could almost sit on a My Bloody Valentine album, but there's no denying that under the waves of guitar texture and dreamy falsetto vocals there's a definite metal edge to them. Eyes is laced with blast beats and showcases some impressive guitar shredding, and then Sleep Whisper somehow manages to come across as a low-key indie rock track despite the viciousness of the rhythm section. I think it's this uncanny ability to marry musical unpredictability with the perfectly consistent production style that makes their music so Moorish. I've just realised this list is becoming a bit whoops or prog, but unfortunately Wilder Run just had to go and release a solid follow-up to 2019's stellar Veil of Imagination, so here we are. These guys provide an interesting glimpse into modern prog by offering up a broad palette of styles, from folksy contemplative pieces to a more extreme sound reminiscent of Gojira or Opeth, all bundled together with a huge symphonic sound and some catchy musical melodies. Passenger and Identifier are both great examples of this versatility, each utilising their 10-minute runtimes to take us on an ever-evolving tour of the band's strengths, while the ending Distraction Suite is just a straight-up compositional and musical joy to hear. In its best moments, the new Foxtails record reminds me of viscerally, heart-wrenchingly open and raw post-hardcore, a la Dispute or Touche Amore. The major twists to that formula lie in the sweeter, more melodic vocal passages and the substitution of a lead guitar for a violin, two simple changes which transform the soundscape notably, most obviously on the more mellow maudlin numbers like Space Orphan, and the bulk of album highlight La Belle Indifference. I have to say though, it's the more aggressive passages that really do it for me. Bookending tracks Ego Death and Paper Tiger in particular proving to be some of my favourite pieces of music this year. It wasn't until about my 10th listen to this record that I realised why I like it so much. Indian Handcraft's rampant aggression, quirky approach to song structure, and absolutely insane drumming make them an almost one-to-one alternative for early Melvins, a band which I absolutely adore. Crisis Breeder, for example, has the sort of intense rhythmic drive, venomous vocals, and almost prog-like riffery that could fit comfortably on Bullhead or Ozma. To be fair though, these guys are more than just a tribute band. New Death Therapy is a distinctive psychedelic guitar instrumental, while its follow-up Feral Cats is balls-out hardcore punk, both of which show a creative flair and mastery of a breadth of musical talents. But god damn is it nice to hear the tracks that could easily be new material from one of my favourite bands in their heyday. Like most records by seminal post-rock supergroup crippled Black Phoenix, Banefire is needlessly long and honestly contains quite a few tracks that I wouldn't miss if they were cut. The reason it appears so high in my list though is that because when it's good, it's very, very good. These guys have been honing their craft, somewhere between gorgeous evolving third wave post-rock and something approaching jangly 80s alt-rock for a while now, and this record shows the fruits of their labour with choice cuts such as the sprawling beauty of Rose of Jericho, the guitar masterclass that is The Pilgrim, the intensely climactic conclusion to The Scene as a False Prophet, or the balls-out aggression session No Regrets. If the rest of the album was as good as its highest points, this would be in the running for my top spot this year. I've been a fan of Health since the noisy-ass days of the first two records, but the recent Disco 4 project has been an interesting change of direction to say the least. Taking a turn into industrial and in some cases even something approaching nu metal, this second record from that project sees Health collab with the likes of Nine Inch Nails, Lamb of God, Poppy and Perturbator for a distinctive, polished, aggressive sound that I was surprised to find myself not hating. The pairings with The Body and Backwash, AD1000 and Gnostic Flesh Mortal Hell respectively, did a particularly good job of catching my ear, while hearing Trent Reznor on top form again for Isn't Everyone was also a welcome addition. Even the weaker tracks on here still tick all the boxes if you want something heavy and catchy in equal measure. An unexpected highlight of 2019 for me was stumbling across Wait's debut EP, We Are in Transit, a tightly knit set of 3 supremely technical, death metal tinged mathy prog songs with enough compelling riffs, distinctive tones and intricate melodies to hook me out of my years-long apathy towards that particular style. This year they dropped their full-length follow-up and, well, honestly it's not as good. A few of the tracks on here drag a little, making room for excessive repetition and extended vocal passages that don't feel like they add a great deal to the composition. That said though, the highlights here are stellar. The anguished screams of A Path to Travel, giving way to an off-kilter discordant guitar lick, the haunting intro to Lone Presence Supreme, the entirety of everything happening on Half Funeral. The musicianship is impressive throughout, and the best ideas here are some of my favourite pieces of music in the genre. A little pruning and this could easily make my top 10. Catchiness suits the Mars Volta. Even back in the days of the 20-odd minute jazzy prog rock magnum opuses, there was an innate danceability to almost everything they did, a rhythm and groove and an energy, an incredible ear for hooks. And that's why my unpopular opinion of the year is that their comeback album, a more low-key, clean and smooth collection of Latin rock jams, is possibly their best since 2006's Amputecture. Not every track on here is a 5 out of 5 masterpiece for sure, but the best of these 3 to 4 minute songs, such as the brash opener Blacklight Shine, the liquid smoothness of Vigil, or the surprising sweetness of Palmful of Crooks, could be prime movements in one of their classic mammoth tunes. And even if it's more low key here, the pristine musicianship of the band is still incredibly evident to anyone with half an ear. Boris are Boris and it's what they do, Boris released 3 records this year. W was their most varied and possibly their most creative, but lacked anything that really grabbed me. Fade was a multi-part drone monster which felt massively outclassed by some of their own earlier work. The third, and coincidentally also the third album they've released called Heavy Rocks, however, is an incredibly fun, high-octane, frenetic guitar assault that exudes the energy of a band 20 years their junior. Tracks like Question 1 and My Name is Blank are straight punk rock bangers. Ghostly Imagination is pure aggression backed by an almost club-like drum beat, and Chained can only be described as the noisiest thing you're likely to hear this year. The tempo only drops twice, once for the heavily distorted sludge of Nosferatu and then again for the glitchy, spacious piano ballad Not Last Long, which provides an unexpected yet welcome twist ending for an all-round solid release. PRR's latest record feels like a culmination of their work to date, taking the more conventional, gently flowing prog rock sound of their later work and fusing in a healthy dosage of the gorgeous vocal harmonies and heavier use of electronics evident in their earlier records. With its 7 tracks flowing smoothly into one another, Above Cirrus feels almost like a 46-minute suite of ever-evolving melodies and engrossing hooks. The band have always had a very poppy aesthetic, and it really shines through for them here, giving the album's huge climactic moments and dense layers of instrumentation a glistening sheen that makes for a sound that's as extravagant as it is catchy. Closer Lucid is one of my favourite tracks in the discography for this exact reason.
Have you seen the drunken captain singing what you want to know?
Noisy math rock darlings Black Midi captivated me with their first record, confused me with their second, and now have finally convinced me I'm a fan with their third. Tracks like Eat Men Eat and Welcome to Hell are prime examples of how they have one of the most reliable rhythm sections in the business. Sugar Zoo and The Defense both make great use of horns in drastically different ways, while The Race Is About to Begin is the sort of frenetic math rock that would sit comfortably on their first album. And then the closer 27 Questions is like a 3-part mini-opera which sees a show tune-esque mid-section abruptly explode into a staccato guitar riff in a schizophrenic musical moment that sums up the band's whole vibe nicely. Weird, yet oddly compelling. I'll admit it, I miss grunge. Simple hard rock bangers delivered with a charming sloppiness and an often uncomfortable level of angst sounds good to me. How the follow-up to the likes of Nirvana and Alice in Chains was the overproduced sound of 2000s bubblegum pop, new metal and pop punk, I'll never know. Anyway, point is that spiritual successors to that sound still very much exist out there, and one of my favourites this year was Pretty Sick's third record, a glorious spectrum of detached self-reflection, barely contained rage, and acerbic bitterness bundled up in a package of catchy hooks and visceral performances. Highlights include Tap Along Opener Yeah You, noisy chorus delivery vehicle Human Condition, and the vocal exorcism that is PCP. This was my first time hearing Jordan Reyes. He's not a big name nor a particularly prolific one, but this record made some minor waves on blogs I follow, and upon listening to it myself I could see why. It's very easy for ambient drone music to become samey and boring, but the tracks on this record managed to avoid those traps through subtle yet compelling ideas. The mantra-like singing on The Tide, the drive-by sweeping horns on Would I Were a Moth, the layers and layers of intertwining fluctuating synths on Trilineation, which emphasise every syllable of the spoken word monologue, and the way the gentle folksy front half of Maybe I'm the Dust erupts into its noisy oppressive back half is just chef's kiss. The insane mathy drumline ripping into the ominous organ chords in the first 30 seconds of this record were one of my most "how have I not heard these guys before" moments in recent memory. Gospel, it turns out, have been kicking around since the mid-2000s, but this year they released only their second record, an uncompromising post-hardcore assault that is easily this year's must-hear release for fans of a good rhythm section. Not that the guitars or keys are slacking here, as showcased by the comparably more spacious tracks like SRO and Warm Bed, and the absolutely unhinged vocals have their own distinct charm, but it's those dense drum rhythms that keep catching my ear, and the way they interplay so smoothly with the bassline. Most notably on tracks like Tango and the aforementioned opener Bravo. This shit is textbook. Tristan Schoen, the one-man musical powerhouse behind Author and Punisher, achieves his intense industrial doom sound using a series of machines he built himself and which bear closer resemblance to industrial equipment than recognisable instruments. I mention this not only because it's so damn impressive, but also because the onslaught of grinding, thudding abrasiveness you hear in his music is so rhythmically satisfying yet unnaturally alien sounding that it could only really have been achieved by these means. I'm fairly sure I wrote about his previous album Beastland in similar terms, but honestly he's gone and knocked it out of the park again, so if the idea of what I'm describing sounds at all intriguing, then this is as good a starting point as any, especially thanks to that banger of a Portishead cover in Glory Box and the monster of an opening track in Drone Carrying Dead. damn, that title track alone is enough to put this record on my list. In fact, all three 10+ minute black metal odysseys on this record, those being False Light, Phoenix and Leviathan, are genuinely spellbinding, atmospheric masterpieces which do a great job of showcasing what the conventionally lo-fi genre can achieve in a highly polished setting. The jazz influence is, I think, what catapults these guys into competing with Fen for my top black metal band spot. The way they manage to make smooth saxophone solos and borderline funky double bass passages fit in so naturally with the blast beats and tremolo picking and death growls gives these guys an innate groove and sophisticated flair that their contemporaries would struggle to match. The album runs long and requires the right mindset, but when I'm vibing with it, god damn is it a ride.
For the hellion, hyperspeed as it battles. Fucking need for the help, cause it's what I did to myself. Put the ball in the
It'd be very easy to dismiss Backwash as one note, this being her fourth collection of intense abrasive hip-hop tunes thematically centered around her struggles with the collision between her trans identity and Christian upbringing, but each time she drops a new record, it ups the ante. The production here is lush and detailed enough to stand on its own merits, her acerbic rhymes and screams adding a layer of embellishment to already compelling music, and similarly the vocals feel like they're on another level now. The lyrics are smart and well structured with some great dynamics and cleverly placed rhyme schemes to prove that she's more than just an angry voice over a heavy beat. It's rare that an artist continues to impress without changing up their sound, but tracks like Vibana and Nifwiti prove she's got the staying power and creativity to go the distance. Followed Rolo Tomassi for a while, and have long been a fan of their ability to flow from low-key sweetness to chaotic hardcore insanity and back without missing a beat. This record is perhaps my favourite of theirs to date, with a heightened focus on the gentler side of their sound which allows the more aggressive elements to carry way more impact. One of my favourite runs from any album this year has to be Drip's intense wall of sound building up into the balls-out tidal wave that is Prescience, which guides us through a wall of jabbing guitars and thundering drums until it eventually gives way to the ethereal piano ballad Stumbling, like the eye of a storm opening up to a gorgeous little reprieve. The album is pretty stacked from front to back though, and a perfect marriage of the uncompromising and the haunting. Can't help it, I'm a certified Pup fanboy. Yeah, their albums consistently make my top 10 every time they drop, but it's not my fault they keep putting out some of the most compelling and visceral pop punk to hit tape. And from the moment self-effacing piano intro 4 chords explodes into riff of the year contender Totally Fine, it's obvious that this one's not going to be any different. Other highlights include surprisingly poignant yet catchy as all hell ode to a discarded guitar Matilda, the massive arena stomper chorus that explodes from the grimy verses of Waiting, and the acerbic meta-commentary of album closer Pup the Band Inc. is filing for bankruptcy. But really it's just more Pup being Pup, and that's fine by me.
Open up the window, I don't want to see the sun soaking up the smoke in your eyes.
It's hard to find an accurate comparison to draw for Dyslexicon. There are times, like on the raucous Precipice, that you can hear clear inspiration from post-punk staples like Unwound. There are times, like on the bombastic Wedding Day with its infectious outro and high-energy guitar thrashing, that they almost put me in mind of the likes of Green Day. And then the album is capped off with Torquemada, a 17-minute prog rock-inspired monster with jubilant trumpets and layered vocal harmonies and enough dynamic shifts and stylistic variants to put me in mind of the Mars Volta. Also sometimes there's death growls. So yeah, I can't really put a genre to this one, but just rest assured that it's all really catchy and fun and you should go listen to it. Drug Church are a band who do one thing and do that one thing really well. Hygiene is 27 minutes of no-nonsense, raucous, jubilant post-punk energy distilled directly into 10 endlessly listenable tracks. A pure swagger on display here, from the impeccable vocal delivery to the meaty, choppy guitar riffs that are almost casually to the point in service to the songs and their aesthetic, gives the band an air of undeniable cool. The intensely catchy choruses on tracks like Plucked and Million Miles of Fun could have carried this record into a comfortable spot on my list alone, but the monumental closer Athlete on Bench comes along and effortlessly becomes my favourite tune of the year. Eagerly looking forward to more from these guys.
So hold your tongue! Or I'll hold it for you!
you ever wanted to hear a Scottish man rant poetic political screed over intricately arranged symphonic black metal as if Marquis Smith was born a couple hundred miles further north and somehow ended up joining Ne Obliviscaris? If you're a member of the incredibly narrow niche to whom the answer to that question is yes, then boy do I have a recommendation for you. This album is an intense, uncompromising listen, but for the dedicated it is overflowing with enough incredible lyricism, unique musical ideas and top-notch technical playing to satisfy anyone with a taste for metal or unconventional music in general. Check out Closer Cable Street again to hear a pure distillation of what this band are all about. Facebook only ever did one good thing, and it probably did. It was introduce me to Melt Yourself Down. I adored 2020's 100% Yes, and now they're back again with another brilliant collection of infectious grooves, hum-along melodies, and a whole spectacle of genre-bending bangers. The band's key quirk is to make almost gratuitous use of its horn section, whether it's to lace an already catchy tune with blasts of accenting horns like on the title track, or to drive the entire tune as a rhythmic undercurrent like on Night Siren. But even when the band rely less heavily on its dual sax leads, like on the vocal-led harmonies of All We Have, they're still consistently bringing fresh ideas and memorable hooks to the table. How they aren't a bigger deal is beyond me.
Ain't nothing left where you used to stay. Where you used to stay. I got my head to the views.
I can't help it, I'm a certified Zealanada fanboy. Yes, their albums consistently make my top 10 every time they drop, but it's not my fault they keep putting out some of the most compelling and visceral blues-tinged black metal to hit tape. And from the moment the percussive vocal affectations in Run explode into a Percussion of the Year contending drum line, it's obvious that this one's not going to be any different. Other highlights include the enrapturing classical-style finger-picking on Erase, the pulsating build-up to the gut-wrenching screams in I Caught You, and the incredible vocal versatility on display throughout the call-and-response epic Church Burns. But really it's just more Zealanada being Zealanada, and that's fine by me. Rare for a band to release what might just be their best record nearly 20 years into their career, but I think that just might be the case here. The Deer Hunters brand of theatrical, narrative-focused prog rock is ratcheted up to another level here, as they paint the scene for a post-apocalyptic tiered society through a set of tracks which mirror the rings of their fantasy city. The sound here lives somewhere between Dream Theater and a Disney film, so if cheese isn't your thing, then maybe give this one a miss. However, if you can embrace the dramatic style, you'll find incredible moments in every track, from the slap bass underpinning Industry, the intricate use of horns on Middle Class, or the enormity of the choruses on Patrol, and the thinly veiled satire of the Western class system is just the icing on the cake.
That's a fantasy world. That's the one that I've chosen.
So I'll be real with you, when I found out this album was made by a YouTuber, the hipster in me didn't want to include it in the list. Yes, I really am that shallow. But goddamn, I don't think a single record this year has slapped me right in the feels the way this one has. Don't get me wrong, there are bangers on here. The primal urgency of Knots and the indomitable Danny Brown feature on House Settling spring to mind. But this record is at its best when it's spewing poignant lyricism over maudlin piano chords or crawling off-kilter beats such as on atmospheric Gut Punch Tell Me a Joke or Fantasy World, a slow burn ballad with such a monumental climax they could easily have closed out the album. Unfortunately, that spot is taken by despondent romantic spoken word diatribe Cassini's Division, with its staticky microtonal instrumental painting an image of an answer machine message from an unhinged ex-lover. Damn good stuff. If you told me last year that this year's number 2 spot would be taken by a Radiohead side project, I probably wouldn't have believed you. I like the band, but I've not really been excited by their output since the early 2000s. This record changed everything. The Same's infectious synth melody, the awesome interplay between the bass and guitar on the opposite, Panavision's chorus piano run building up into an orchestral hook, the way Thin Thing's funky guitar riff builds up into a full-force post-punk assault. That key change in We Don't Know What Tomorrow Brings. Even the more classic sad boy Radioheady tracks like Free in the Knowledge or Waving a White Flag are able to hit with way more impact when juxtaposed against the more high energy tracks on here. I didn't think these guys would ever drop anything that could compare to OK Computer or Kid A, but to me at least, this one comes pretty damn close. Most years, my top spot is taken by an album that pushes against genre convention, one that revises itself and surprises me with every track. And this year had plenty of options for that sort of thing. The Smile, Quadica, Melt Yourself Down, the list of Jobei albums is pretty endless honestly. However, if I'm being honest, the album I keep going back to more than any other in 2022 is Wailing Storms' latest release. A shockingly great blues rock affair by a band that I've never really rated prior to this. It might not be super forward thinking or experimental, but every track on this thing is incredible, with the likes of Drag and Carolina Moon providing some spine-chillingly evocative blues grit, perfectly counterbalanced by the faster-paced brutalism of tracks like Sunday Morning Ceremony and the title track. There's not a note out of place here, nothing that doesn't feel somehow specifically formulated for maximum impact, while simultaneously maintaining the rawness and realness that the musical style demands. Great music, great lyrics, great performances, great production, just a good time all round. Hi, Unscripted Joe again, just back again to wrap the video up. What do I need to say? Do I need to say anything? Is there anything I need to say here? Is there any point to not just ending the video after number one? I mean, there's nothing else to really reveal here. There's no great twists to come, is there? It's just me talking to a microphone. I almost said to a camera. I don't speak to a camera. No one wants to see my face, goddamn. This is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. It was a pleasure having you here, and I'm gonna go back to playing Final Fantasy X now, because I felt like replaying Final Fantasy X. That's a good game, innit? I will fucking die on the hill that the laughing scene isn't as bad as people make it out to be, and is, you know, a relevant character development point, and the whole fact that it's fake laughing was kind of integral to the way the characters are expressing themselves with their frustrations and their bottled up confusion at the position they're currently in. This was a video about albums at one point, right?